In the Vatican secret archives, there are documents that have never been exposed to the public, records that date back to centuries of church history and hold information capable of rewriting our understanding of the past. Among these manuscripts, there is a letter written by a high-ranking church member in the 17th century, a document that was considered so dangerous that the Holy See took extreme measures to conceal it. Hidden for centuries, this letter contained information that threatened not only the structure of ecclesiastical power but also the very foundation of beliefs that support the Christian faith. Accounts from scholars who had access to ancient records mention this document as a key piece of a great secret kept by the Church since medieval times. This manuscript was found by chance among relics stored in the depths of the Vatican, a location inaccessible to most historians. The paper, yellowed by time, showed burn marks, as if someone had tried to destroy it, and was filled with symbols that referred to secret societies' codes of the time. The content of the letter spoke about unknown rituals performed inside the Vatican, mentioned spiritual entities that guided church decisions, and warned about a truth that could never be revealed to the world. But why was a document with such information treated as a threat? What was in it that made the Vatican work so hard to keep it secret? For centuries, the Vatican has accumulated an impressive collection of historical documents, many of which remain locked in the secret archives, one of the most inaccessible places in the world. Among accounts of conspiracies, apocryphal records, and correspondence between popes and monarchs, there are references to a singular manuscript, whose existence was carefully suppressed. This letter, written by an influential church member in the 17th century, came to light in mysterious circumstances when scholars were investigating forgotten documents in a little-explored section of the archive. Its content was classified as highly sensitive, and any official mention of it disappeared from public records. The document was found by an independent researcher who, in collaboration with former clergy members, had access to a set of manuscripts discarded during a reorganization of the archives. What immediately drew attention was the deteriorated state of the paper. Carbonized parts indicated that someone had tried to destroy it, but for some reason, it survived. Additionally, symbols engraved in the margins suggested that the author had knowledge of encrypted codes used by secret orders of the time. The presence of these signs raised suspicions that the letter's content involved something far beyond the Church's conventional doctrines. The first deciphered excerpts mentioned events that occurred within Vatican walls that were never officially documented. The letter described secret meetings between ecclesiastical leaders, unknown ceremonies, and spiritual practices that radically diverged from traditional Christian doctrine. Most intriguing was the assertion that these rituals were not just a hidden tradition, but rather an essential part of maintaining the Church's power. This called into question the Holy See's official narrative and explained why this manuscript needed to be erased from history. The author's identity was another enigmatic aspect. Some clues suggested it was a bishop with unrestricted access to the Vatican's inner workings, while others pointed to a monk who, upon discovering forbidden truths, decided to document them before mysteriously disappearing. The sender's name, however, seemed to have been deliberately erased or altered, making definitive identification impossible. This practice wasn't uncommon. Compromising documents throughout church history were frequently altered or rewritten to suppress dangerous information. Most impressive was that the letter mentioned a specific event that occurred in 1601, when a select group of cardinals was summoned for an emergency meeting at the Vatican. There are no official records of this meeting in church archives, but independent historical accounts indicate that during this period, an internal crisis hit the Holy See, leading to drastic changes in its power structure. The mention of this meeting in the manuscript reinforced the thesis that the letter's author had direct knowledge of the institution's deepest secrets. Another disturbing detail was how the text described certain figures who supposedly exercised influence over church leaders. The author didn't refer to them as mere advisors, but rather as spiritual guides who had been directing Christianity's course since immemorial times. But who were these guides? Were they human beings, spiritual entities, or something even more obscure? The choice of words seemed purposely ambiguous, leaving room for interpretations that went beyond conventional understanding. The attempt to destroy the letter suggested that, at some point, someone within the Vatican realized the danger of its content. However, the fact that the document wasn't completely incinerated indicated that not everyone within the institution agreed with its elimination. This raises an intriguing question. Was there an internal struggle within the Church between those who wanted to keep certain knowledge hidden and those who wished to expose it to the world? After the manuscript's discovery, Experts began drawing parallels between its content and other forbidden historical documents. Accounts of secret rituals in the Vatican aren't new. There are similar records in apocryphal texts, medieval writings, and even in correspondence between kings and popes. What differentiated this letter was the tone of urgency and clarity with which the author warned about the danger of keeping this knowledge hidden. He not only exposed the Church's secrets but also suggested there was something even greater behind it all. The Vatican never made any public declaration about this document, which only increased speculation. The Church, throughout history, has always had effective mechanisms to control narratives and deny inconvenient information. But if this letter was just a hoax or an unimportant account, why was it removed from the records? Why was it burned and hidden instead of simply refuted? With the letter's discovery, a new wave of investigations into Vatican archives emerged, and scholars began questioning what else might be hidden under the Holy See's inaccessible vaults. If a single manuscript was capable of bringing such impactful revelations, what else might be hidden, waiting to be found? Now that this document has come to light, the big question is, what exactly was written in it that made the Vatican take such extreme measures to ban it from history? The analysis of the manuscript revealed content far more disturbing than a simple doctrinal divergence. The letter's author, clearly an influential church member, precisely described events that occurred behind Vatican walls but were never officially documented. More than just secret rituals, the text denounced a network of manipulation that had been perpetuated for centuries. The author spoke not only of the suppression of certain knowledge but also of the deliberate adulteration of human spirituality, suggesting that the Church not only concealed information but also shaped faith to serve hidden interests. The 17th century was a turbulent period for the Catholic Church. The Protestant Reformation had already shaken its supremacy, and the Inquisition worked tirelessly to eliminate heresies. It was precisely in this context that the letter emerged, and this might explain why it was considered so dangerous. The document mentioned the existence of older writings that presented a completely different view of Christian spirituality, suggesting that Jesus' teachings were altered to consolidate the institution's power. This leads us to an inevitable question. Is the faith we know today a diluted and controlled version of a much deeper and more transformative knowledge? One of the most shocking aspects of the letter was its mention of entities that influenced the Vatican. The author described these presences as invisible consultants, beings who were not divine in the traditional sense but who guided church decisions at history's most crucial moments. This revelation echoes accounts from occultists and esoteric societies who claim that spiritual knowledge has always been under the control of an elite that understands and uses forces beyond popular comprehension. Could the Vatican have access to ancestral wisdom that dates back to times long before Christianity? The manuscript wasn't limited to exposing secret rituals. It also mentioned forbidden knowledge in the Church's possession, something that could completely transform our understanding of existence and humanity's role in the universe. The author claimed that within the Vatican were records about the true power of human consciousness, the ability to shape reality through intention and spiritual energy. This concept resonates with ancient traditions, such as alchemy and Hermeticism, which always defended the idea that man is capable of transcending his limited condition through occult knowledge. The letter also referenced even older documents that were systematically eliminated or hidden. Among them would be texts describing advanced spiritual practices, understood by previous civilizations and later erased by official history. This detail directly refers to the destruction of the Library of Alexandria, the disappearance of Gnostic sects, and the banning of gospels that presented an alternative vision of spirituality. This means the Church may not have been just a guardian of faith, but rather an active force in suppressing deeper spiritual truths. Another intriguing aspect of the letter was its description of the true role of popes. The author insinuated that pontiffs were not just spiritual leaders, but guardians of a secret passed down through generations. This could explain the Vatican's rigidity regarding the confidentiality of certain documents. If each pope receives exclusive knowledge upon taking office, this means there is a continuous lineage of hidden information being passed through the Holy See's corridors. What exactly do these leaders know that cannot be shared with the world? Unlike mere heretical texts, the letter wasn't limited to criticizing the Church. The author's tone was that of a warning, almost like a final testament. He made it clear that the forbidden knowledge he mentioned wasn't just a risk to the religious institution, but to anyone who tried to disclose it. He spoke of mysterious disappearances, of monks and theologians who tried to bring this information to light and were silenced before they could reveal what they knew. This makes us question, How many other letters like this might have existed but never reached our knowledge? The Vatican's suppression of the document was immediate and brutal. Not only was it removed from accessible archives, but any mention of it was erased from subsequent records. This strategy isn't uncommon. The Church has used this method several times throughout history, as in the case of the Index Librorum Prohibitorum, the list of forbidden books that lasted for centuries and censored writings that threatened the official narrative. This means the Vatican didn't just hide this letter but treated it as a real danger, worthy of total eradication. If it were mere delusion or invention, why would it need to be eliminated with such effort? One of the manuscript's most impactful excerpts mentioned a prophecy associated with the Church's decline. According to the author, there would be a time when lies could no longer be maintained, and the truth would emerge uncontrollably. This revelation has parallels with the third secret of Fatima, another prophecy deliberately concealed by the Vatican that many believe contains predictions about the Church's collapse. If this information is real, it means the Vatican always knew that one day its control over human spirituality would come to an end. Another interesting point was that the letter not only denounced the Vatican but also suggested that other forces were involved in keeping this information secret. The author mentioned that occult societies, governments, and even dissident groups within the Church itself had access to fragments of this forbidden knowledge. This reinforces the idea that the secret doesn't belong just to Catholicism, but is part of a much greater control that spans ages and civilizations. If this is true, then the Vatican might be just one piece within a much broader network of power. Finally, the great question raised by the letter was the impact of this knowledge on humanity. If the true origin of spirituality were revealed, what would change? Would religions collapse? Would man's relationship with the divine be forever transformed? Or worse, would those who hold this knowledge lose their power over the world? If faith was shaped to serve hidden purposes, what would happen if everyone knew the truth? The identity of the letter's author has always been a mystery. The analysis of the writing and references in the manuscript indicates that he was not a simple monk or a low-ranking priest, but someone who had direct access to the Church's most closed circles. The vocabulary and style of the text suggest that he was a highly literate member, possibly a bishop or cardinal. Some researchers point out that he might have been a member of the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith, formerly the Roman Inquisition, which would explain his detailed knowledge of forbidden documents and internal rituals of the Holy See. But if he was such a respectable figure, what led him to risk his position, and possibly his life, to write this letter? Unlike what one might imagine, this man did not seem to be an outspoken opponent of the Church. On the contrary, his words indicate someone who long believed in the institution but, upon encountering certain truths, experienced a collapse of faith. This is reflected in the manuscript's tone, which begins with a factual account and gradually transforms into an anguished outpouring. He not only exposes secret information but also reveals a deep moral dilemma. How could someone who dedicated their life to faith continue serving an organization that, according to him, concealed such profound secrets? The letter didn't emerge from nowhere. Historical accounts indicate that in the late 16th and early 17th centuries, internal disagreements arose within the Vatican about how certain knowledge should be handled. Some church figures argued that ancient information about spirituality should be studied and preserved, while others insisted such texts should be destroyed to prevent them from reaching public knowledge. It's possible that the letter's author was part of a small group within the Church who believed that truth should not be hidden, and decided to act when he realized his side was losing this battle. But what happened to him after he wrote this document? Official church records are scarce about figures who fit the author's profile, but there are obscure accounts of clerics who suddenly disappeared during that time. An intriguing case is that of Paolo Sarpi, a Venetian historian and theologian who came into conflict with the Vatican by challenging papal authority. Although Sarpi wasn't burned by the Inquisition, he survived an assassination attempt and was excommunicated. Did the letter's author meet a similar fate, or was his disappearance even more definitive? The most disturbing hypothesis is that the author may never have been a single person, but rather a group within the Church itself. This theory suggests that the letter was written by a small network of priests, bishops, and monks who shared secret information among themselves. If this is true, it would mean this manuscript was just one piece of a larger set of documents that were gradually eliminated over the centuries. Perhaps the author wasn't immediately killed, but rather discredited, exiled, or kept in seclusion so his existence would be forgotten. Another intriguing detail is that after the author's supposed disappearance, rumors began circulating within the Vatican about a group known as the Guardians of Light, a secret brotherhood formed by church members dedicated to preserving forbidden knowledge. Some believe these guardians continued protecting certain truths that the Vatican tried to eradicate, and that fragments of these documents may have been secretly passed down through generations. If this theory is correct, the discovered letter might be just one piece of a much larger puzzle, whose totality remains hidden to this day. Beyond conspiracy theories, there is concrete evidence that the Vatican always used sophisticated methods to erase certain figures from history. The practice of rewriting records, known as Damnatio memoriae, was common within the Church and was applied to various theologians and scholars considered heretics. The letter's author may have been a victim of this type of censorship, having his name and any trace of his existence systematically erased over the centuries. However, there is a detail that makes this story even more intriguing. If the Vatican managed to completely erase this man from history, how did his letter survive? This suggests that, at some point, someone within the Church itself made the decision to preserve the document, albeit in a veiled way. Could it have been a dissident priest who hid the manuscript among other archives, hoping it would one day be rediscovered? Or was it a deliberate warning left by those responsible for the suppression, as a way to ensure that the truth would never be completely destroyed? Either way, the disappearance of the letter's author is a disturbing reminder that those who dare to question power structures rarely have a happy ending. But his message survived, and this leads us to the inevitable question. If he was silenced for exposing something so dangerous, what exactly does the Vatican fear the world will discover? The censorship of documents within the Vatican is nothing new. Since the early centuries of Christianity, the Church has had the power to decide which information should be preserved and which should be erased from history. However, the suppression of this particular letter followed an even more rigorous pattern, suggesting it contained something far more dangerous than simple theological questions. Unlike other heretical texts that were publicly condemned, this manuscript was treated as something that could never be known. But what was the real reason for this? What makes this censorship even more intriguing is the method by which it was conducted. While many documents simply disappeared or were destroyed, there are indications that the letter was kept secret within a restricted network of church members, classified under a filing system inaccessible to most scholars. The Vatican has an internal scheme where certain manuscripts are classified as extra omnes, a term meaning outside of all, used to indicate documents that should not be accessed even by ordinary cardinals. This suggests that the letter not only existed but may still be stored at some hidden level of the Vatican Apostolic Archives. What few know is that the suppression of texts within the Church has always involved more than simply hiding information. In some cases, forbidden documents were re-edited to remove or modify crucial parts of their content. This happened, for example, with the records of the Council of Nicaea, 325 AD, where the foundations of Christian doctrine were defined. There are indications that various passages from apocryphal Gospels were adjusted or eliminated so that the official narrative would remain intact. If the letter met the same fate, fragments of its content may still exist within records that were apparently corrected over the centuries. Another disturbing possibility is that this letter was used as a loyalty test within the Church itself. In secret organizations, it's common for certain documents to be deliberately planted to identify who shows interest in forbidden knowledge. If this manuscript was used in this way, the Vatican may have allowed some copies to circulate temporarily, just to discover which clerics were willing to question the official narrative. Those who showed too much curiosity were marked as traitors and may have been removed or silenced before they could share their discoveries. But what exactly was written in this letter that made the Church take such drastic measures? According to the few surviving accounts, the manuscript not only described unknown rituals performed within the Vatican, but also suggested that certain religious leaders received guidance from entities that were not divine in the traditional sense. This revelation not only challenged the belief that the Church was guided by the Holy Spirit, but also called into question the true purpose of its existence. If a high-ranking member of the clergy wrote this, it means he not only had knowledge of these facts, but also saw in them an imminent danger. The problem for the Church wasn't just the information itself, but the impact it would have if widely known. History shows us that great religious institutions depend not only on their followers' faith, but on the authority they exercise over them. If an internal document exposed that this authority was built on hidden secrets, the Church's structure could crumble. It was exactly this fear that led to the suppression of the letter and so many other texts over the centuries. The censorship of spiritual information has always had profound implications. In the early centuries of Christianity, The Gnostic Gospels were eliminated because they presented a vision of the divine that placed spiritual power directly in the hands of individuals, without need for an intermediary institution. The same pattern was repeated with the Dead Sea Scrolls, texts found in the 20th century that contained ancient teachings that could alter the traditional understanding of the Bible. If the Forbidden Letter followed this same line, it could contain truths that would make the Church irrelevant to humanity's spiritual search. Even with all the Vatican's efforts to eradicate this information, fragments of the letter were indirectly mentioned in texts by historians and religious dissidents who had access to ancient documents before they were destroyed. Some scholars suggest that part of its content may have been secretly transferred to private collections or even hidden within coded manuscripts in European libraries. If this is true, it may be just a matter of time until more details about this manuscript come to light. Another intriguing question is, who else, besides the Vatican, might have an interest in keeping this information hidden? The Church has always been interconnected with great political and financial powers, and the revelation of certain secrets could compromise not only the clergy but also the stability of other institutions. Governments, occult societies, and even academic organizations could have reasons to prevent this knowledge from becoming public. This means that the letter's censorship may go beyond the Church, involving a network of interests much broader than we imagine. If the letter disappeared from official records, this doesn't mean its impact has been erased. The simple fact that its existence continues to be debated shows there is something to be discovered. And the question that remains is, if this manuscript were finally revealed to the world, would we be ready to deal with the truth it contains? The discovery of this forbidden letter not only challenges the past but also raises questions about humanity's future. What makes this document so impactful is not just what it reveals about the Vatican, but the knowledge that may have been suppressed along with it. If the Church really tried to hide information of this level, does this truth involve only spirituality, or could it contain secrets that would also influence science, technology, and the very structure of reality? Throughout history, spiritual and scientific discoveries have walked together, and were often persecuted by the same forces. What would happen if this manuscript contained references to advanced knowledge about consciousness, body healing, or even the structure of the universe? There are historical records indicating that various ancient civilizations possessed a deep understanding of natural laws that science has only recently begun to explore. Could this letter have mentioned forgotten practices that could revolutionize medicine or reveal new paths for modern science? Many ancient texts, such as the writings of Hermes Trismegistus, the Hindu Vedas, and the Kabbalah manuscripts, speak of a universal knowledge that transcends matter and connects all existence. These texts were marginalized, considered mystical or symbolic, but today modern science, especially in quantum physics, begins to suggest that there is, indeed, a relationship between consciousness and the fundamental structure of the universe. Could the letter contain clues about this forgotten connection? Would it mention secrets of alchemy, spiritual practices capable of expanding human perception, or even knowledge that could reverse diseases and prolong life? Another intriguing question is that, in recent years, we see a growing openness to ideas previously considered esoteric. Concepts such as collective consciousness, parallel realities, and the influence of thought on matter are increasingly discussed not only in spiritual circles but also by scientists and philosophers. Could this be a sign that certain truths, previously hidden, are beginning to emerge in a controlled manner? There are theories that certain groups, including secret societies, governments, and even dissident church members, may be releasing this information gradually to avoid cultural shock or social collapse. If this hypothesis is true, then the letter may be just one piece of a much larger process of progressive revelation of truth. There are many prophecies that speak of a time of great revelation, a moment when humanity will have access to information that will completely change its perception of reality. Nostradamus wrote about events that would challenge religious and political structures. The biblical apocalypse mentions a period when nothing will remain hidden. And astrology itself suggests we are entering the age of Aquarius, a period associated with the expansion of consciousness and the breaking of old paradigms. What if the question isn't just about what was written in the letter, but when its content should be known? If this information was deliberately suppressed for centuries, but is now beginning to resurface, this might indicate that we are approaching a critical moment in human history. Perhaps the Vatican's greatest concern was never just about hiding the past, but rather controlling how and when certain truths would be revealed to the world. If all this is real, then this letter is not just a lost document. It might be a sign that we are about to cross a point of no return in the awakening of human consciousness. But are we prepared to deal with the implications of this revelation? The last part of the letter brings a warning that seems to have been written not just for its time, but for future generations. The author doesn't limit himself to exposing secrets about the Vatican or denouncing the suppression of certain knowledge. He suggests that there is a carefully elaborated plan to control how humanity perceives reality. According to him, the suppression of information doesn't happen just through the censorship of forbidden texts, but also through the manipulation of time itself, history, and what we call truth. This concept is unsettling because it suggests that it's not just about hiding facts, it's about rewriting the past to shape the future. If this is true, then certain historical events may have been carefully planned so that humanity would follow a specific path. This idea resonates with ancient esoteric traditions, like the Kabbalah and Hermeticism, which speak of cycles of forgetting and enlightenment, where humanity is kept in a state of controlled ignorance until the right moment arrives. The question that arises is, who defines this right moment? Another intriguing point of the letter is that the author doesn't seem to be trying to prevent the truth from being erased. On the contrary, he seems to suggest that this knowledge was deliberately written to be discovered in the future. This leads us to an even deeper hypothesis. What if the letter wasn't just a forbidden document, but part of a larger plan to gradually expose the truth? The very existence of the manuscript indicates that, somehow, this information survived. But who allowed it to reach us? The conspiracy described in the letter isn't limited to the Vatican. The author mentions that there are other groups who also have access to this knowledge, but guard it for unknown reasons. This raises a disturbing question. Are these groups trying to protect humanity from a dangerous truth, or are they simply waiting for the right moment to reveal it? There are various theories suggesting that some of the greatest scientific and technological discoveries of recent centuries may have been influenced by information that came from hidden sources. Could modern advances, such as studies in quantum physics, DNA exploration, and new archaeological discoveries about lost civilizations, be connected to this secret knowledge? Furthermore, the letter references something that can be interpreted as a hidden timeline of revelations. The author mentions that humanity will reach a point where certain secrets can no longer be kept hidden. This statement resonates with various prophecies and spiritual traditions that speak of a time of great revelation. The biblical apocalypse, for example, mentions a period when nothing will remain hidden. Some modern interpretations of astrology suggest we are entering the age of Aquarius, a period associated with the expansion of consciousness and the overthrow of ancient systems. Could the letter be part of this process? The most frightening implication of the manuscript isn't just that the truth was hidden, but that those who hold this knowledge may be manipulating the course of history to this day. If certain events were planned to prevent humanity from awakening to this reality, then what else might have been orchestrated behind the scenes? Wars, economic crises, abrupt cultural changes. Could these situations have been used as distractions to prevent people from realizing what's really happening? But perhaps the most important question is, what exactly is about to be revealed? If there is an ongoing effort to control this information, does this mean we are approaching a moment when it will become impossible to suppress? And if this happens, will we be ready to face this truth? If you're interested in exploring more about spirituality, I've specially selected for you some videos full of profound knowledge and fascinating discoveries that you'll love. Just click on one of them. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel to continue this journey of self-discovery and spiritual learning. Your commitment to knowledge is the first step to transforming your reality.